to for inviting me to this conference. And also, I'm so pleased with my visit to KAIST. So the theme of my talk is Simplicial volume on the cohomology. So it is introduced by the program. So it is outline my talk. The first I will review some definitions and results about the Simplicial volume of cross manifolds and about the cohomology and their relations. After that, I will talk about the Simplicial volume of manifolds and especially our sketch the proof of the positivity of Simplicial volume of Q rank 1 of this matrix basis. So to define the Simplicial volume, let's start with defining the L1 norm on singular homology. So for topological space X, then we have a real single chain complex. Then we can give we call the Simplicial L1 norm on singular chain complex. So if chain C, we can assume that this is a reduced form. Then the L1 norm of C is defined by the sum of absolute values of coefficients in C. So it is some L1 norm on real valued chain complex of X. Then it induces a semi-norm on the homology as follows. So for homological class alpha, then the L1 norm of alpha is defined as the infimum of the L1 norms over the all cycles representing alpha. So then we can define the Simplicial volume of cross manifold. So we have a natural the canonical fundamental class in the top dimensional homology. So for cross manifold, so we define the Simplicial volume of N by the L1 norm of this fundamental class. So from the definition, you can know that intuitionally the Simplicial volume measures how efficiently the fundamental class can be represented by the simplices of X. So from the definition of the Simplicial volume, then we can get some simple proposition. So if F is a continuous map between the topological space X and Y, then for homological class alpha, then the push forward, the L1 norm of push forward of F alpha is less than the L1 norm of alpha. So from this, you can know that the push forward of F is a non-increasing function between the homological space. So it can be proved by a simple arguments. So if G is a cycle representing alpha, then the push forward of Fg is like this. Then we can see that the coefficient is the same. But it can be, this class can be the reduced mode. So the L1 norm of this cycle is less than the L1 norm of G. So from this inequality, we can take the infimum over all cycles representing alpha, then we can obtain the generic inequality. Yes. So from simple observation, we can know that some criteria for Simplicial volume to vanish like this. So F is a continuous map from between two cross manifolds of the same dimension. Then the push forward of F maps the fundamental class of N to degree times the fundamental class of N. So from the previous proposition, we can know that, right, a kind of Hewitt theorem. So Yeah, so if the manifold admits self-map of non-trivial degree, then this is more than 2, then you can know that the simplicial volume of M is 0. So here is an example. So sphere, it is well known that the spheres and tori and all dimensional real projective space and the complex projective space admits self-map of non-trivial degree. So here simplicial volume is 0. You can know that. Okay. And here is two important properties of simplicial volume. First thing is product rule, and second is the proportionality principle. So from the product rule, you can know that if the M pole, the M is has a vanishing simplicial volume, then the products of them also has a vanishing simplicial volume. And also it is called the proportionality principle. So MN is being related close to collective Riemannian manifolds, and they have the same Riemannian universal cover. Then their ratio between simplicial volume and the Riemannian volume is constant. That constant depends only on the universal covering. So in particular, the third term proved that in the case of hyperbolic closed manifolds, the proportionality constant is square volume of all geodesy and simplices in the hyperbolic and spaces. So actually this is the same with the volume of the ideal regular simplices in hyperbolic space. So actually the simplicial volume was introduced, used in Groff's proof of most rigidity to show that if two closed manifolds are homotopy equivalent, two closed hyperbolic manifolds are homotopy equivalent, then they have the same volume, Riemannian volume. So from the proportionality principle, you can know that the simplicial volume is homotopy invariant. So two closed manifolds are homotopy equivalent, then their simplicial volume is same. So and with this proportionality principle, their Riemannian volume is same. We can know that easily from proportionality principle. So, so even though the simplicial volume is defined as homotopy invariant, but the Groff noticed that the simplicial volume of M includes some non-trivial information about the Riemannian volume. So Groff considered some concept of minimum volume for the complete smooth manifold M. So he considered some whole matrix on M with sectional curvature pinched by -1 and 1. And also he defined the minimum volume of M by the infimum of Riemannian volumes over all such a matrix. Then Groff proved that like this inequality. So the simplicial volume gives a low bound of the minimum volume. So it means that if the simplicial volume is positive, then minimum volume is also positive. So if the simplicial volume is positive, then all metrics, such a metric, cannot crush M as possible as we want the sufficiently small Riemannian volume. Okay. So from this you can see that the simplicial volume encodes some non-trivial information about Riemannian volume of M. So people has been interested in the positive tail Simplicial volume because it implies that the positive tail minimum volume, and also it is related to some rigidity. For example, local rigidity theorem. So growth conjecture, the cross manifolds with non-positive curvature and negative ridge curvature have positive Simplicial volume. So after so far, there are two ways to compute Simplicial volume. So first thing is a geometric approach. This comes from the connection between Simplicial volume and Riemannian volume, Riemannian geometry. And the second is an algebraic approach. This comes from the connection between the Simplicial volume and bounded cohomology group. So I will sketch the group briefly in each approach. First, let's see how to compute the Simplicial volume in geometry approach. So first, Grove and Sungwoon proved that the Simplicial volume of related closed connected Riemannian manifolds of negative sectional curvature. The curvature is bounded from below. Then their Simplicial volume is strictly positive. So it can be proved by some geometry, by using geometry. So Sungwoon first introduced some geodesic stretching map from between the single chain complex, which is hooked up to the identity. So geodesic stretching is defined by some inductively. So okay, I will. So first, drawing simplex. We denote by like this. So x0 and x1 is in a point in M. Then this is a geodesic arc. Okay. From x1 to x0, and in general, the geodesic simplex with the order this vortex. Then this is a geodesic cone with like this. X squared minus 1, and with the top point, the x cap like this. So the geodesic simplex is well defined in the manifold of non-positively coupled manifold, because the geodesic to connect between 2 points is uniquely determined. So start from introduce like this map. So and then the straightening map, the straightened simplex has some uniform bound volume in manifolds of sectional curvature, negative sectional curvature. So from this property, we can prove that for G, let G be a cycle representing fundamental class, then we have a straightening cycle. It also represents fundamental cycle. And by the drum theorem, the chromatic product of volume and the fundamental class gives a volume of M, and it is a user inequality, and the uniform boundedness of stranded simplex gives this inequality for some Rn. So we take the infinite over G cycles representing fundamental class, then we can obtain the row bound of Simplicial volume. So we can conclude that the Simplicial volume of M is positive. So So like this strategy is compute the simplicial volume in the geometry approach.
So Rn is the volume of something.
Yeah. Yes, Rn is a uniform bound.
Which is always.
In hyperwave space, that is the Springer volume of all geodesic simplex in hyperwave space. But in general, for negative Cope manifold, we cannot know this variable exactly. But I know to analyze the growth conjecture, if the curvature bounded below by -1, we can assume that the curvature is bounded below by -1 by scaling the metric. Then this number is the Vn in the maximum. Yeah, Springer.
Do you mean bound below by -1 or bound above by -1?
Below.
Okay.
Above. Yeah. So that a growth conjecture that thing, but we don't know exactly the values that go to the number. Okay. So now I will review how to compute the simplicial volume in algebra approach. So we define the input norm on singular cohomology. So for topological space X, then we can also similarly give the input norm for cochain complex like this. So the input norm of F is defined as the Springer of F over all singular simplices. And also it induces a semi-normal cohomology like this. For phi, the everything normal for phi is defined by the infimum of F over all cycles representing per phi. This. So with this semi-norm, we can consider some bounded cochain complex. So like this. Then it is a complex. So it induces a new cohomology, and we call the bounded cohomology of X. So and also there is a natural inclusion of the bounded cochain complex into the usual singular cochain complex. So it induces a natural homomorphism from bounded cohomology of X to the singular cohomology of X. So we call it the comparison map. So here is the duality principle in the sense of firing. For topological space X, we have the L1 norm on singular cohomology, and also L infinite norm and on the singular cohomology. So that their norm is our dual, like that. The Simplicial, the alpha, the homology class alpha, the L1 norm of alpha can be computed by the bounded cohomology class due to alpha, like this. So in particular, the Simplicial of n can be computed by the L infinite norm of bounded cohomology class due to the fundamental class of n, like this. So from the duality principle, you can know that if there does not exist any bounded cohomology class due to fundamental class of n, then the Simplicial volume is 0. So the Simplicial volume is positive if and only if there is some bounded cohomology class due to fundamental class of n. In other words, it is if and only if the comparison map is surjective, because the top dimensional in the top degree composite map. And also the growth proved that the bounded cohomology of M is isometrically isomorphic to the bounded cohomology of its fundamental group. So I will explain why it is like that. So I want to define the continuous cohomology. So for topological group G, then we can consider the G invariant cochain complex consisting of continuous map from the GK plus 1 to R. Then it becomes a complex. So it uses some cohomology we call the continuous cohomology of group G. Then with this the coboundary, it is usually the homogeneous coboundary operator. And also we can give the Sungwoon on the single G invariant cochain complex. This like this. And also we consider the bounded cochain, G-invariant bounded cochain complex. And also it induces bounded, continuous bounded cohomology. And similarly, the inclusion of the bounded cochain complex into the continuous cochain complex induces a composite map like this. So it is a usual definition of continuous bounded cohomology of G. Then the growth proved that the remarkable result. So X is some countable serial space. Then, so as you know that we have some input norm on the single cohomology of X, and also you can define the bounded cohomology of its fundamental group, and with the Sungwoon. Then the growth proved that they are isometrically isomorphic each other. So from this theorem, we can calculate the Simplicial volume in algebraic approach, because from the geometry principle, the Simplicial volume can be computed by some bounded cohomology class due to fundamental class of M. And this cohomology is isomorphic, isometrically isomorphic to the bounded cohomology of its fundamental group. So we can compute the Simplicial volume in the bounded cohomology of its fundamental group. So I will introduce some result by using algebraic approach. Recently, the 2008, the Bushel-Carson, reformulated the proportionality principle in the range of continuous bounded cohomology. And she also proved that for close to local symmetric space of non-compact type, then the Simplicial volume is equal to the volume of N over some growth norm of the volume form of X. Thus, X is the universal the symmetric space of M. So it is a balanced isomorphism. The continuous if the G is a Lie group with no compact vector and center free, then the continuous cohomology of G with coefficient R, then it is isomorphic to G invariant M form on X. So you can know that the volume form is can be regarded as an element of continuous cohomology of G. So from this theorem, we can easily prove that the Thorson outcome, because in the case of the hyperbolic n space, it is usually seen that the growth norm of the volume form on hyperbolic n space is exactly the Springer volume or geodesic simplex. So, and also it is well known that the continuous bounded cohomology of metal group vanishes. So if the fundamental group is a metal, then from this theorem, the bounded cohomology of M vanishes. So it means that there is no dual bounded cohomology class to the fundamental class of M. So it means that the Simplicial volume of M is zero. So very simple corollary. And for hyperbolic group, the 2001 we have proved that the convex map is surjective for each n greater than 2. Then for a spherical manifold n with hyperbolic fundamental group gamma, then we have a commutative diagram like this. So it is a graph result, and also this is follows from the spherical manifold. Then the C gamma, the surjectivity of C gamma implies that the surjectivity of Cm. So this name is surjective means that there is a bounded cohomology class due to the fundamental class of n. So from the duality principle, the Simplicial volume of n is strictly positive. We can conclude that. Okay. And since growth conjecture is there, so actually people try to prove the positivity of Simplicial volume for closed local symmetric space of non-compact time, because the local symmetric closed local symmetric space of non-compact time is a representative space of with non-positive sectional curvature and the narrow each curvature. So, 2006, the Lafont and Schmidt proved that the growth conjecture for closed local symmetric space of non-compact time. Actually, their work is based on the work of Besson, Kutra, and Garo around the use of the biocenter method in proving the rank 1 linear entropy conjecture for local symmetric space, and Cornell found for the subsequent development of the biocenter method technique in higher rank spaces. So let's see how to prove it in our sketch group. So here idea is simple. So they construct a chain map. So we call it bicentric stretching map on singular chain complex of M. That it exactly play a role like a geodesic stretching map in the narrowly coupled manifold. So that and the closed local symmetric space of non-compact type. So they assume that the local vectors locally symmetric to the hyperbolic plane or the SL3R quotient SO3R. So then we have some kind of pattern solver measure on the visual boundary of X. So it is called the conformal density. It is there from the X to the space of atomic probability measures on the visual boundary of X. Then for a measure mu, we define a function to mu from x to r by integrating this non-function over the visual boundary of x with respect to that measure. Then we can prove that it is the strictly convex function. So they have some unique linear point. From that observation, we can define some bicenter of measure. So the bicenter of measure mu is defined to be the uniform unique point of x where G mu is minimized. Then we can define a map from standard simplex to the space of the probability measure, right there. Then, given a single case simplex, the corresponding vertex set that can be defined, the straightened simplex, right, that by using the percenter method. Then there are important four properties of bicenter straightened map. The first is that the bicenter straightened map are gamma equivalent. It means that it descends to a manifold. And the second is gamma equivalent to chain homotopy to the identity. It also implies that it descends to a map to the manifold. And second is the image of top dimensional straightened simplex is differentiable. And also the Jacobian of them is bounded from above. So from the property 3 and 4 implies that the volume of bicentrically straightened simplex is uniformly bounded above. So it is exactly the same with the property of geodesic straightened simplex. So by single argument of Thorsten, we can prove that the simplicial volume of M is positive. And also, first, we assume that there is no local factors locally asymmetric to hyperbolic plane or the SO3R, quotient SO3R. But this case, in the case of hyperbolic plane, the Thorsten proved that the positivity of simplicial volume. And also the SO3R, in the case of that, the Carson proved that the geodesic simplex in the SO3R, quotient SO3R, has a uniform bounded volume. So we can prove that also the simplicial volume of M is positive. And also I like to introduce the simplicial volume of manifolds. So actually people think that the complete manifold of finite volume case. So, but for open manifold, the top dimensional, the homology vanishes. So we cannot have a fundamental class on the top dimensional homology. So we need some new different homology. So we can call the locally finite homology. So for topological space M, so the SK M that be the cell of continuous map, the map from the standard simplex to M. Then a subset of A is called locally finite. If any complex subset of M intersects the result or only finite many elements of M. So it is a property of locally finiteness. So then we can consider the locally finite chain complex like this with usual the co-boundary, usual boundary operator. And it induces the local finite homology, and also for oriented connected manifold M produces fundamental class. So it is well known that the top dimensional homology is with coefficient G is isomorphic to G. So we have some here very fundamental class in the top dimensional, the local finite homology. So and also similarly we can give L1 norm on local finite chain complex, and also induces a semi-norm on local finite homology. So we can define the simplicial volume of M of manifolds M by the increment of the L1 norm over all cycles representing the fundamental class. Then unlike the closed manifolds, the simplicial volume of manifolds is some mysterious. The first Sungwoon proved that for manifolds finite volume complement with narrow pitched curvature, then the simplicial volume of M is positive. And also he proved that the proportional constant is also the same with the case of the closed manifolds, like that. But on the other hand, the graph proved that any Cartesian product of three open manifolds its simplicial volume always vanishes. So with some audio mysterious thing. And in the graph that used some amino recovery to prove these things. The 2009, the Rowe and Sauer, by using graph argument, they proved that for locally symmetric space of Q rank at least 3, and their simplicial volume is gel, like that. And also they proved that the Q rank 1 locally symmetric space, the Hilbert modular variety, their simplicial volume is positive, because Q rank is so closely related to the structure of ends of manifold. So, for example, the Q rank is 0, then the manifold is compact, and the Q rank is greater than 1, then the manifold is a non-compact manifold. So, they proved that only the Hilbert modular variety. So in this paper, they expected that the simplicial volume of Q rank 1 spaces is positive. So, and also this is the first class of examples of open locally symmetric spaces for which the positivity of simplicial volume or minimum volume is known. So, okay, basically we proved that their expectation is true. So if M is a Q rank 1 locally symmetric space, with the local direct factor locally isometric to the hyperbolic plane or the SS3R quotient SO3R, then the simplicial volume of M is strictly positive. And also we can get immediate corollary from the graph inequality. The minimum volume of Q rank 1 locally symmetric space is positive. And also we can prove that the case of Q rank 1 locally symmetric space is covered by the SO3R, quotient SO3R, their simplicial volume of M is also positive. So, and the second, in the case of the hyperbolic plane, the third one proved that the Simplicial variable of open complete hyperbolic surface of finite volume is positive. So we can conclude that every Q rank 1 locally symmetric manifold with the irreducible universe cover has positive Simplicial volume. So I will let you know what is the Q rank. The arithmetic lattice is defined by usual definition. And Q rank is defined as the dimension of any maximum Q split torus of algebraic G. So the Q rank is as I told you, Q rank is closely related to the structure of ends of manifold. So we observe that that structure make it possible to compute the Simplicial volume of M. So I will sketch the proof. Here is the essential observation. So it is difficult to study the Simplicial volume of open manifolds in general because the stretching, geodesic stretching or bicentric stretching of local finite chain is not necessarily local finite chain. So here is an example. So this is a one-cut disk H2. And we can cover like this. Like this. We can cover the H2 like this covering. Then it is a local finite chain, but the stretching of this chain is not local finite. You can see that if we geodesic or we choose a geodesic, then they are stretching like this. So maybe the point has the infinite many the user infinite many similar inside this point. So like this is difficult to study the Simplicial variable of manifolds, open manifolds. So we observed that the structure of ends of Q rank 1 locally symmetric space can prove that the projects of the stretching map on locally finite chain complex. The bicentric stretching of locally finite chain is again locally finite chain, like that. So I will let you know why the stretching of locally finite chain is also locally finite chain. So S being symmetric space of non-compact type, the corresponding to inverse cover of M. Then there is just a union of countable many open holovers of X. So that is the complement of US is gamma invariant, and also it descends to a manifold compact submanifold like this. And also I will picture what to help your understanding. Okay, this is the inverse cover. Too big. Okay. This is manifold. Then there are many holovers like that. Maybe it can be intersect each other. Anyway, so this is US. It is a real number. And the descent to a manifold, a compact manifold. So, like that. Maybe if the holover intersect each other, then it gives rise to some corner manifold like that. So, but the QF1 locally symmetric space, then the derivative hover are disjoint. This is a main property of QF1 locally symmetric space, different from the higher rank QF locally symmetric space. So from this property, we can prove that what is mean? QF1 local symmetric space has so nice ends. So vertex, and also that this is some part of whole sphere. So vertex here, because the strength simplex depends on just the vertex set. So vertex set here, we call it ES. Here is MS. Maybe some M0 is a complex manifold. So as increasing, we have some like this equation of MS. Then vertex is contained in the ends. Then its geodesic stretching is contained in also the ends here, because this is a geodesically convex set overall. So, and also we proved that for bicentric stretching map, for given S, so there exists S0, there is MS0. So the vertex set is contained here, and their stretching, the image of bicentric stretching cannot exceed the complex set. So it is contained in both these ends. So we can prove this thing. Because it is just a quotient of whole, we can calculate some by using pattern settlement measures. So from the lemma, we can conclude that the bicentric stretching of locally finite chain of M is again a locally finite chain. So because I will explain why it is. So it suffices to show that the stretching for locally finite subset A, it suffices to show that the stretching of A is locally finite. From the definition of locally finite chain complex. So let M be a complex subset of M, then that choose a complex submanifold MS containing K, because MS is an equation of M. So here complex K, the MS containing the K, then from the previous lemma, there exists the S0. The vertex set of simplex contained in here, then is the image of the straighten the simplex is contained in here, the MS. So it means that the image does not intersect K. So from the and also the sigma, the in A does not intersect the MS0. Okay. Then all vertices of sigma are contained in only one cluster, because if the vertex set of sigma contained in two different compounds of M, then the two vertices, they have to pass through the compact core like that. This is a contradiction to the assumption that sigma does not intersect MS0. So the all vertices of sigma are contained in the only one cluster H0. So the stretching then the stretching, the sigma, contained in ES, so it implies that the image of stretching of sigma does not intersect the K. So we can conclude that K can intersect the image of the stretching simplex for intersect the MS0. So A is a locally finite subset such the sigma finite set. So therefore, the stretching of A is a locally finite subset. So similarly, we can conclude that the chain homotopy between the straightened simplex and the identity can be extended or chain map to the locally finite chain complex. So we have the bicentric stretching map on the locally finite chain complex of N, and also it is also chain homotopy to the identity. So it is also the presence of geodesic stretching map can be proved. And we use similar arguments of Sungwoon, but it is a softer calculation because of the locally finite fundamental class is an infinite sum, kind of finite sum. So by drawing theorem, we have to construct some sequence. So and we have to prove the absolute convergence, and also it converges to the volume of N. Anyway, we can prove that this the proportion, and then by the same argument of Sungwoon, we can prove that the simplicial volume of M is also positive. So this is a story of our result. So and from as an application of our theorem, we can draw the kind of Dewey theorem for Q-rank 1 local symmetric spaces. So far, for the Dewey theorem for Q-rank 1 local symmetric space has to be assumed that the function is a proper and Lipschitz condition. So from our theorem, we can draw the Lipschitz condition on function f. So now I will introduce the further study. So there is two kinds of studies. So first thing is we know that the simplicial volume of Q-rank 1 spaces is positive, but we don't know what it is exactly. So and also it is the row and Sauer and Grove also consider some Lipschitz simplicial volume to study the simplicial volume of manifolds. So and also that they are equal or not. We cannot know that. And also you know that the main problem is the simplicial volume of Q-rank 2 spaces. We don't know any expectation for the simplicial volume of Q-rank 2 spaces, and also there is even any examples for the simplicial volume of Q-rank 2 spaces. Simply the open surface maybe punctual torus. This is not the Q-rank 2 local symmetric space, but it is similar to the Q-rank 2 spaces. But we cannot know that the simplicial volume of the products of two open surface is positive or not. So maybe you make some examples for Q-rank 2 spaces. So I will stop here. Thank you.